It's the all-new John Curley Show featuring John Curley, starring John Curley, featuring John Curley. It's all new. Yeah,
just as free as we'll ever be.
Wow.
Just as free.
CBB?
Yeah, baby.
Free as we'll ever be.
Chase Oliver, my man, on the phone. How are you?
Doing all right. Just enjoying a day out here in Dallas, Texas before I fly home and get to see my friends and family for the first time in a while.
Long time. Where's friends and family? Where's home?
Atlanta, Georgia. That's where I'm from, and that's where I'm proud to call home, and happy to head back there and see some folks, get some much-needed family time after a severe deficit of that on the campaign trail the last couple of years.
There's not a lot of friends out there. I'm going to play 2 minutes of you. 2 minutes, 52 seconds of you. And you should have won, because listen to this. This is you during the debate.
To tell a story about the arbitrary and damaging nature of these lockdowns, I had a friend of mine who ran a flower shop. It was her life's dream to run a flower shop. She loved flowers. She could name every flower out of the book. And her business was closed down during COVID because it was deemed unessential. Now, what was not closed down was the Lowe's Garden Center down the street, because Lowe's sold essential items. And so that business got to stay open. That business was somehow shielded from COVID. No one could catch it in Lowe's, but only in the flower shop. And my friend's flower shop went under. It didn't survive. And where's my friend work now? At the Garden Center at Lowe's. She works for the big man now, because they were allowed to stay open. They were allowed to keep their businesses going. And the last thing I want to say is Dr. Stein said we need to get Big Pharma out of the FDA. We need to get the FDA out of our government. We do not need an FDA. Now, when it comes to poisoning air and water, I agree with you. We need to have clean air and clean water. When a company poisons a community, they should be able to sue a company without any tort caps. Let a citizen jury bankrupt the polluters. That'll be a free market incentive to make sure it's never happening again. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to put that in the hands of bureaucrats to say, we can only allow this much poison in our water or that much poison in our air. Hold companies accountable, sue them, take them to court, have a citizen jury bankrupt these companies. But when we remove tort caps, because right now, when they pollute, they get a slap on the wrist. And who created those caps on torts? The government. Because of the debt and deficit spending of our government, that is what creates inflation. When the government prints trillions of dollars out of thin air, it devalues the dollar that is in your wallet. That devalues the dollars that you take to the grocery store to fill up the grocery cart, the dollars you use to pay for your rent, the dollars you use to run your business. And it's time for that to stop. But I also want to talk about the insidious tools that the Fed are trying to use right now to remove cash from our society, namely the CBDC, central bank digital currency. It should be opposed by every single person in this hall with every fiber of our being, because it's going to remove the ability for us to privately transact with one another, to privately move our money around as we wish, because the government will know every single purchase you make under a CBDC, and that is how we get to the social credit score nightmare that we don't want to be living in. These aren't just wars that are fighting out of the altruistic nature of wanting to help people around the world. These are wars for profit. These are wars that profit a military-industrial complex that makes money by killing people all over the world. And we allow our tax code and our budget to fund these things. Frankly, Boeing, you can build something else. Raytheon, you can make something else other than bombs. I am so sick and tired of saying we have to kill people around the world to make our economy strong because we make weapons components in these congressional districts. That is BS. That is justifying the murder of innocent people for the profit of a military-industrial complex to which you don't get profit off of.
Boom.
They do. And so if we want a foreign policy that's rooted in peace, we have to examine first why we're not having that. It's because we have a military-industrial complex that makes the money off of the death, makes the money off of the misery. And I can think no more unjust, disgusting way to make money than to do it by killing innocent people around the world.
Chase Oliver, I'm sure you've said these things a million times. How come you didn't get this? Why didn't people hear this?
Well, there's several factors. First, when you run as an alternative party, the two-party system has built-in power of incumbency to prevent us from having a lot of media coverage and to get that fair play on the airwaves, so much so that they compete in taxpayer-funded primaries across the country. My taxpayer money is used to fund the Democratic and Republican primaries in my home state that gives them that media coverage. And then, so there's that challenge. And of course, the challenges of just running across the country with the limited resources we have, considering how much our government is bought and paid for by giant corporate interests. And when you run as a libertarian intent on removing the government's power, they certainly don't see fit to fund you the billions of dollars that they do to fund Democrats and Republicans to keep this game going.
It's rigged. I see the numbers, that the amount of money that is spent. The big money, the corporations, both national and international corporate, they don't care who's in the White House. They don't care who's in Congress. They're just going to fund either side. They win either way. And they don't want a third-party candidate. You know the expression, lesser of two evils? It's never lesser of three evils. It's always two. And there was a big thing. I thought for sure this would be the year, because there's so many independents that would say someone to represent me as opposed to the D or the R. I thought this would be the year for the Libertarian to at least, get some traction in some place. But you can't beat the system. So how can you get in there and get, people that are independent to start to, you could get in and start to change some of the Republican or some of the Democrats and then start to spread more of a libertarian point of view in there. But it seems you're just completely shut out, Chase.
Yeah, well, what we have to do is we have to get over the voters' conditioning of fear. It's fear that has people voting for the lesser of two evils instead of who they think is the best. It's fear that conditions us to stay within this two-party duopoly, this false division, this, black or white, you're with us or against us kind of narrative. And what we have to do is we have to break voters out of their conditioning of fear and give them something to hope for and something to fight for that is better than what the two-party system is providing. It also means we have to change the way we run our elections. There's the Voter Bill of Rights, which is something I fought for as a part of my platform. A great libertarian named Lars Mapstead came up with it. And I want to support those ideas that are going to help open up our elections so more choices and more voices can be involved. And of course, when we do that, we also put good ideas out in the atmosphere that hopefully can be adopted by one of the mainstream parties. Hopefully we can see a pushing of the Overton window towards liberty as we get out there and fight. And I knew going into this race the chances were slim and the times were going to be tough, but I did it anyway because I knew we needed to have a messenger for liberty, for free markets, and for the ability to control ourselves and not have the government do it. I was honored to do it, and I'll keep up the fight starting today. Today is day one of the next fight for liberty.
So Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate, what was it like? You'd walk into some place, it's a hall of some sort, and there would be, 10, 15 people there. And you get back in the car, stay in some crappy hotel, have some watered-down coffee, and go to the next place. How did you keep doing it?
Well, you have to keep a positive mindset. You have to keep thinking about the victories that you're having, even if that means converting one or two voters at a time or having a worthwhile conversation with voters at like a state fair or a county fair. And you're right. It can be very stressful. It can be, it can be a very heavy thing. You wake up in a hotel room and you have to remember what state you're in because you've been traveling so much, those kinds of things. And that's certainly a stress. But what keeps me going is knowing that the principles of liberty are powerful and that when people get to hear them, it can transform our political system. You just have to keep plugging away and doing that. And I'm just a happy warrior. I'm somebody who's always said, let's keep pushing forward. Let's keep fighting for what we need to. And, maybe it's that stubbornness that keeps me going.
Yeah. When people say, if you vote for any other party, if you do a third party, you're basically hurting the other. You look at Ross Perot got 19 or 20%. Because Ross Perot is in there, it affects the outcome. So a third-party vote really doesn't do anything for anybody because the system is so rigged against a third voice to get in there. Is it possible to get in with somebody like Trump's administration, which seems to have a little bit more, in some regards, sometimes, sort of a laissez-faire position, although he talks about these huge tariffs and things like that? But generally giving more power back to the states, more local, like Silent Cal, right, 1924, he cut taxes 3 times. He reduced the size of the federal government by about a quarter of its size. And states grew, the economy grew in each of the states and actually produced more revenue than the federal government was taking in because the power was back in the hands of the people. I don't know how you would get that to be done now.
Yeah, well, I would like to see that done in the Trump administration or in any administration, right? And I think there are things we can fight for that are worthwhile. But on the whole, I'm worried that Trump, his administration, and the national Republicans are going to continue to do what the national Republicans have done whenever they get control of the White House and both chambers of Congress. They forget that spending and deficits and debt are an important thing, and they just kind of run up the bill with their own personal programs, their own personal priority list. And so I'm going to keep fighting to reduce government. And, you know, Ross Perot is a great example of actually how you can change the conversation. He got 19% of the vote. He did not win. But what he did do is he focused the Republican Congress and the Democratic president on getting deficits reduced. That was the most important thing he talked about. He continuously rang that bell to say we need to reduce the debt and deficits. And because of that, I think much of the tone and tenor of the talk on the economy throughout the 90s was geared towards reducing debt and deficit. And, you know, I've been hammering that the entire election season. I didn't get 19% of the vote, but hopefully we can keep plugging away and reminding people that spending is important, most especially when Republicans are in charge and they can do something about it.
Yeah, you know, Otto von Bismarck in, was it 1880s or something, said if you can make them dependent, you can count on their vote, right? You basically are buying the votes by, oh, we'll give you this, we'll give you that, we'll provide this, you'll get college, you'll get home. So then you're not going to cut that guy out because he's the one that's paying for your college, or paying for this, or paying for that. Everybody's paying for whatever it is, but they're buying votes basically with this. Joe, before you came on, learned a new expression. What was your expression you learned about the cheese?
The mouse didn't know the cheese was free until it was too late.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and, you know, this is why I have a problem with the Democratic Party. It's why, you know, my severe problem with them is that they just, you know, they're, you know, God bless them, their heart's in the right place, but their brain just sure isn't, because you know, they want to see people have health care, and they want to see people have education and child care and all these things. But they don't recognize, like, the government is the worst people to allocate resources to those ends. There are far better ways to provide affordable health care, affordable child care, quality education, than leaving it in the hands of government bureaucrats. I don't want the people in charge of my health care to be the same government that runs Amtrak. I don't want the people running the child care in this country to be the same people who run the United States Postal Service. I just think that that is just a bad thing. So maybe their hearts are in the right place. They want to see people get help. And maybe it is an insidious plot just to get everybody dependent on terrible government services. But either way, it doesn't work. The math doesn't work in terms of the growth of government. And as far as helping people, there's about 1 million better ways to allocate resources than through a centrally planned government where they tax you $1 and give you back a dime.
Yeah.
Socialism failing to work as it always does.
Like
you
that.
talk about giving everybody something free, and all of a sudden there's no food to eat. Hello.
Yeah. Our famous Vince Scully cut. I think Thomas Sowell wrote a piece in 1987, Constrained and Unconstrained. It basically was saying this, that a liberal believes that we can fix people, that we can solve problems, that we can change human beings, right? That we head towards utopia. That's constrained. The unconstrained was, man is basically flawed. You're not going to be able to solve these problems. And there's no way you can change that. But the liberal constantly wants to make the decisions that are what they feel is best. Like you said, the Democratic Party may have their hearts in the right place, but their heart might be in the right place. Their mind is not, because you can't change people. Let people make their own decisions. Let them determine what is best for them. For somebody to come along, as Ronald Reagan says, where the 7 most frightening words in the English ever spoken is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help, right? That I don't want your help. Let me make my decision. Just leave me alone. But it seems there's more and more of the government coming in and making these decisions. So then that's why you see people that are so upset today, crying, not able to go to work, because they feel as if this thing that's taking care of them won't be there to take care of them. They're not free. They have become dependent upon some force, thousands of miles away from them, that really doesn't know them, care about them, or know what's best for them. How do we instill the idea of real freedom in the American people?
It's going to take a lot of steps. It's not a single step. There's not a silver bullet to do it. But what we have to do is actually return ourselves not to this progressive, kind of idea that government is the solution to our problems, but actually to the classical liberal idea that we are all free people, and that the best way for us to work with one another and allocate resources and to live amongst one another is to do so using free exchange and not having the government make those decisions for us. And that's the kind of fight that I want to have. And a great way to start it is to have a conversation with a parent to say, I bet you have unconditional love for your child. I bet you would do anything for your child to see them survive and thrive. But why do we take power and decision making out of your hands and putting that in the hands of a bureaucrat that doesn't even know your kid's name? To them, they're just a number on a spreadsheet. And when you start explaining those ideas that way and saying, don't we need to return power back to you locally to make the decisions on how you raise your family, the healthcare decisions, the education decisions, the values that you raise them with? Everybody really feels like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you say, well, why do we give our power to the government then?
I'm going to ask you one last question, Chase, and this will leave you on kind of a dark note here. I got into this argument one time with this guy. Oh, you're a libertarian. I said, I am. Okay, let me ask you this, libertarian. A man is on the bridge, and he's about to jump off this bridge. He will surely kill himself by jumping off the bridge. As he starts to leap, you notice that he bends his knees and starts to push his weight forward. Now, that's his choice. Do you reach out and grab his arm, knowing that if you grab his arm, he won't pull you over with him? Let's assume you're able to, hold yourself on. Do you reach over and save him? Do you
don't
impose
need any government to tell you to do it?
What's that?
I said, yeah, you do, and you don't need any government to tell you to do it because good ideas don't require that force of government for you to help another person.
Right, but it's my choice then to stop him from doing something that is his choice. Do you see the distinction there?
Yeah, you're right, I suppose, in that case. But, really for me, we can't stop people from doing bad things. Like, we just can't all the time. And if we tried to, we would go crazy doing that. It's one of the reasons why libertarians want to end the drug war, for instance. You can take harmful substances if you want to. I think that you should be able to be free to do that. And I think for us to try to control people's behavior in such a way creates all these different structures in government that create violence, which is why we see so much violence from the drug war, certainly more than we would get from a decriminalized world, say, like Portugal does, that allows people to make their own decisions.
Well, listen, Chase Oliver, you had my vote, so I was, what was the total amount? It was 500-some thousand?
469.
We're over 500,000 now. It's about 0.4% of the vote right now.
Okay, listen, you go home to your family, get some rest, keep fighting. I'll do my part.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Peace, love, and liberty to you and your audience. We'll keep fighting tomorrow for liberty.
There you go.
Just as free. Free as we'll ever be.
This song goes out to Peanut.
Just as free.
Chase Oliver, my man.